Hi everyone. So today I'm going to try to do some VNAV using the Boeings and the 747 in this case. It's going to be very different to the Airbus. The Airbus really automates pretty much the whole flight. The Boeing, I haven't got it to work, so if there's anybody who knows how to do it exactly, please comment below. We're going to have a flight here from Melbourne to Hobart. It's quite a short flight, and obviously I'm going to fast forward the bits in between. Here I've chosen the approach runway 12. Just have a look at those settings if you want to do the same flight. What's interesting is the nav log here, just to see the points where we're going to be going up and down and so on. So we're going to be cruising at about 9,000 feet and then going down. And you'll see that the VNAV works in a different way. All right. So anyway. Let's go straight into it. All right, so we're going to go straight into direct to fly. Now, let me just put the lights on a little bit too. All right. Now, what's important is just to prepare before takeoff various things. So I'm just going to look at the panel here. Now, we said we were cruising at 9,000, so I'm going to leave it at 10,000 here. I'm just going to prepare it by clicking on VNAV and LNAV here, making sure that the auto thrust is armed. What we can do as well is just adjust the range of our display here. We can also, well, we can do that a bit later. We can press data. The data will again give you the different heights that this system thinks that the plane should be going at. Now, if I look at the FMC, if you press on VNAV, you see that our cruise altitude is 9,000. Below 250, below 10,000, sorry, we'll be forced to have a constraint at 250 knots. We can look at the legs, and here you can see that it sort of goes straight into the 9,000 feet, flight level 90, and then it sort of does the descent, 6,200, 4,000, and then basically talks about the landing. Now that's fine. So what I've found that we need to do is we can leave the altitude on 10,000. It doesn't really matter. What is important is that here. When we have the auto throttle, we see these symbols, and then we see that the VNAV and the LNAV is in white, so they're basically prepared to function, and you'll see that changes to green when we take off. So let's just go for it. So I'm gonna put a bit of throttle and all the way. Take the brakes off. Okay, takeoff speed is about 160 knots. And V1 is 135, I believe. Okay, there's V1, and okay, I'm going to start pushing back. Just a little bit. Still increasing speed, so gear up. Now I just want to get it a little bit stable.
Boeing 747 contact Melbourne departure on 118.
I'm going to pull up one of the flaps. And here I could already engage the autopilot. And if I let go, it should basically start turning to our to the heading. So it's so let me just turn this. Yeah, well, you'll see it now if when I increase the size on this thing. So here it should already be trying to find our cruise altitude.
Boeing 747, did you copy?
Yeah, let's just redeploy. Now here you can see what's very interesting is that it says LNAV, so it's active. It's guiding us laterally. The VNAV says speed, which means that it's actually gaining altitude by controlling. Well, there's a few settings. It says VNAV speed or VNAV path or VNAV altitude, and here speed is it's getting to where it wants to get to. Now we don't know very clearly where it wants to get to. It's definitely not the 10,000 that's written there. That's what I've put into the console. And here, if we look at this panel, we can see. Let me just turn the range down. We can see that it should try to get to 3,100 and then 7,100, but it actually doesn't obey that at all. It seems like instead of these numbers, it really bases itself on the FLC, so it's trying to get to 9,000. So let's see that. It will be climbing till 9,000, and then what will happen is that the VNAV will switch to a path, VNAV PTH, which means that it's following a flight path, so what's in the FMC. So let's wait for that to happen. Now again, notice that in the speed setting here, it's not shown because the auto throttle is on, VNAV is on, so it's actually managing the speed by itself. And you can see here it's gone to 250, or it's trying as much as possible to keep it level at 250. And here again, I'm not doing anything. I'm hands off. What's interesting is to see when this VNAV changes to path, and that should be when we're approaching 9,000. Definitely not the 10,000. The 10,000 could actually be anything. Now I've read manuals where this is like in the real plane, this is much more important. So, for example, if we had an altitude here written of 8,000, then it would never cross that 8,000, even though the flight plan tells it to go to 9,000. Here in the simulator, it's not at all like that. It actually doesn't listen to this until you press this enable altitude intervention, which we're not going to do now. We're going to let it do its thing. You see here it's changed to VNAV path. So now it's actually just trying to follow this vertical path that we have in the FMC. You'll see though that when we get to a point where we're supposed to go down, in all the tests that I've done, it actually doesn't go down. We need to basically tell it to go down to a certain altitude, but the VNAV still does something. So when we get there, I'll show you. Maybe we can fast forward from now. Let's just take a few outside shots, and then I'll fast forward. All right, so I'll see you. I'll see you when we get to closer to the point. Okay, let's do a quick check. Next point is XROM 9000. We're at 9000. We're still on VNAV path. Let's just check. So we're here, but if we just... Okay, now the active one is XROM. It's a pity that we actually can't, on the simulator now, we cannot change any of these things. So if we write in the scratch pad and try and update these things, or it just doesn't work. All right. So all's well. Let's carry on then. Right, so we can start seeing the Tasmanian coast appearing in the distance there. Let's just go back in the cockpit quickly. Alright, let me just zoom in here. So, okay, there's a bit of glare. LT is at 9000, LATAM at 7850. So, what will be interesting is to see whether it automatically goes from 9000 to 7850, and from what I've seen before, I can assure you that it will not. So we're going to have to help it along. So let's get to this point LT, and then I'll come back to this. Right, we're getting close to that LT waypoint, so let's just go have a look. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to start a slight turn to the right. Let's just have a look. We're still on VNAV path. Let's check when we pass that point what happens. Admittedly though, the FMC still gives LATAM at 9,000. So the FMC is not in accordance with this. So so I expect that the autopilot is following this, but even in cases where these, for example, for the Canley point going down to 6,200, I haven't seen the autopilot actually take control and actually stop the drop. So let's just wait and see once we're past it. Okay. Here we are. So LATAM is at 40 miles away, and you can see that it's in no way trying to deviate from the path. Now, this is where, and I would rather follow what it says on the display here with the data constraints rather than actually following the flight plan. So I would actually start dialing this down to 7,850, or let's say 7,900, let's say. And you can see that it's not doing anything. Now I need to press on Enable Altitude Intervention. And as soon as I do that, you can see that it changes to VNAV speed, meaning that it's now going to try and attain what I've just told it here in the control here. And here we can start seeing the altitude dropping until it gets to 79,000, and then it will say that it will try and keep the altitude that I've actually written here. You can see the marker here for 7,900, where it wants to go to now. And here you can see it's switched back to VNAV path, meaning that now that it's gone to the altitude that I wanted, it's actually back on the flight path that it was assuming. So that I don't understand 100%. But anyway. Alright, let's zoom in on this. So the next point is Canley at 6250, and that does correspond with what's in the FLC. So let's just get out of the plane, and then I'll catch you when we get to Canley, or LATAM rather. Right, so we've reached the next waypoint, so let's just go back in. So here again, if it was doing everything automatically, it would be dropping to 6,250, and this actually coincides with what the FLC says, Canley. But once again, it doesn't. And yet it is still following the path, so it should be following what it says here. Now again, sometimes in the FLC, next to the altitude there's an A or a B, and A says above a particular altitude, B is below this particular altitude. When it has neither A or B, apparently it's supposed to be exactly this altitude. So I'm going to give it a few seconds to sort of react, but I mean it's already too late. So what I'm going to do is just dial in 6,300, and again enable the altitude intervention, and here we should see that VNAV go to speed again, and it should go down. Now just after Canley there's the deceleration point, so there that does work, so we do see the speed will go down to 240, 220 and so on. But as far as the altitude goes, I need to give it a hand, and apparently this is, again, I mean, if a real pilot can confirm this, but this is how it really happens, and the pilots are supposed to help the VNAV along. Normally you shouldn't just let VNAV do its thing. But it seems still to be some problems with the way Flight Simulator is handling this. Right, so we're nearing 6,300. And now we're going to have to be quite careful because we're almost on the final approach. Here it basically says it is trying to match the altitude that we've put in here ourselves. And now it says it's gone back to path. So now it believes it's still following its path, flight path somehow. Again, that's confusing to me. And you can see that the speed has now, the deceleration point has now asked the speed to go below 200. So that's fine. Now, to reach our next waypoint, our next waypoint we should be at 4,200. So I'm going to prepare that. And there's still a bit of a way, so we don't need to go there immediately. Okay, what sort of... I was flying with flaps on. My bad. All right, now, I mean, you're going to say that this is not VNAV, but normally when you change an altitude like this, and you basically want the plane to go to the altitude that you've said, you need to mess around with vertical speed or this one, FLC on, and with VNAV on, basically you just tell it where you want to go, you just press it, and VNAV will itself control the rate of descent. So that it goes down to that level in the most correct manner. So that's where VNAV helps. It automates your life a little bit and makes the approach, let's say, simpler. All right. All right, I think it's a good time to ask it to go to 4,200, so I'm going to ask for that. You'll see the VNAV changing to speed. And we're losing altitude. Okay, looks like the ILS has picked us up already. So here's a bit of oscillation because the plane is managing the speed and the drop. Obviously when a plane loses height, then it increases speed, and here it needs to try and maintain it at under 200. So it's struggling a bit, it's messing around with the throttle. But we'll get to 4,200 soon enough before doing our left turn into the final approach. I'll prepare this as well for 4,000 because that's what it seems to want here. Let's just see. 4,000. There we go. Yeah, it doesn't have much information beyond that, so let's follow that. 4,000, 4,000, and then once we're on this line, I'll just switch to approach, and then you'll see that the VNAV will then say that what's coming up next is the glide slope, and then we need to monitor our speed and start slowing down. Alright, so I'm going to ask it to go to 4,000. Which it was doing by itself, weirdly enough. So now I'm going to press approach, and you'll see in white here the fact that glide slope is armed, let's say, and the localizer is starting to pick us up here. So now we just need to manage our speed. So our speed, we need to be at about 145 when we land. We could put one level of flaps still because flaps 10 is around there, so then that reduces our speed a little bit. I'm going to press speed intervention and then start dialing it down to, let's say, 170. And you can see now the glide slope is active, and our height is now managed by the glide slope. So we don't have to worry about altitude anymore. Let's have a look outside the plane. Oh, it's quite cloudy. Okay. So we're 11 miles away, it seems. 10.9 miles away. That looks nice. All right. Okay, I think I can turn the speed down a bit more. 160, I'm going to give it a bit more, 20% flaps. Okay, there's the runway. I'm going to drop the gear. Let's have a look. Nice. Let's dial it down. Okay, I'm going to put our final level of flaps on. Dial down the speed again to, let's say, 155. Gonna put the auto brakes to automatic. Alright, and get ready to disengage the autopilot. Alright, well, welcome to Hobart. Let's look around. Doesn't look like there's much happening here. So I'll call it a day then. So thanks for watching, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more of these tutorials. Have a good day. Cheers.